Listening to Live the Dream Media, exclusively on the Live the Dream Media Network.
Thank you for tuning in to the Live the Dream Media Network. Our featured broadcast will begin shortly.
You've got a voice, but are you ready for a global audience? Don't just settle for standard studio rental. At Live the Dream Media, we amplify your voice by broadcasting your podcast completely live on our exclusive online radio network. Whether they're down the street or across the world, your listeners can lock in live on YouTube, Meta, and the Live the Dream Media app. Why choose live? Because real-time connection builds a loyal community, extends your reach further than ever, and turns a simple recording into a massive digital event. Stop waiting on the edit. Go live, build your crowd, and live the dream with Live the Dream Media today.
Radio evolves more as the years progress, and it is only becoming better. Introducing the Live the Dream Media app. Catch your favorite music 24/7 and tune into live podcasts, or catch up on your own time with our on-demand library. No matter where you travel in the world, you can be anywhere on the planet and stay connected. Download the Live the Dream Media app for free today on the Apple App Store and Google Play, and experience radio reimagined.
Ready to go live? Take your show to the next level and host your podcast at the Live the Dream Media Professional Studio. From our fully equipped space, you can seamlessly connect with your audience and live stream in real time straight to YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and more. We handle the technical side so you can focus entirely on your content. When you book with us, you get access to top-tier microphones, premium production gear, and full support from our professional audio engineers, all with flexible booking times designed to fit your schedule. Go live with our studio team today. Visit ltdmedia.net or call 520-373-2059 to book your session and live your dream live on air. Here at Live the Dream Media.
Think the music is the only thing rocking this station? Think again. We are bringing you the absolute best in live broadcasting all week long. Turn your dials to the Live the Dream Media Network for our powerhouse lineup of live podcasts airing Monday through Friday. Start your mornings right. Wake up every single Monday through Friday morning from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. with Wake Up Live, hosted by Christopher D. Simone. Stick around Mondays at 9 a.m. for the Marana and Oro Valley Experience with David Samorano and Clint Peak. Then tap into your local community with Southwest Flavor with Ron Arenas at 9 a.m. And don't miss Sobriety, Spirituality, and Sales with Mike Curry every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Get informed at 9 a.m. with Inside Track, hosted by Bruce Ash and Eb Wilkinson. On Thursdays at 10 a.m., we are talking sports with Ron Arenas and Will Pena. Catch former NBA star player Bob Elliott on The Bob Elliott Show every Friday morning at 9 a.m. for 30 minutes of incredible conversations with amazing guests. Lastly, keep an eye out for The Clint Peak Show, popping up at various times to share the stories of amazing people's lives. No matter the day, your story is worth telling, and we are bringing those stories to you live. Tune in to our live podcasts right here on the Live the Dream Media Network. Don't miss a single minute.
Are you ready to elevate your business brand to a global audience? Partner with Live the Dream Media and unlock unmatched reach and visibility through our professional advertising network. Whether you want top search visibility with pay-per-click ads, over-the-top ads, strategic social media campaigns, or massive reach across our podcast network, we have the tools to scale your business. We target major digital, audio, and TV platforms, connecting you directly to local and national listeners, as well as major streaming television networks like Hulu, Peacock, ABC, and much more, and even our online radio. Take control of your growth and start advertising now with a team that delivers real campaign performance. Visit ltdmedia.net or email contact@ltdmedia.net today to partner with our team and start living the dream.
You are listening to Live the Dream Media, exclusively on the Live the Dream Media Network.
The views and opinions expressed on Inside Track are those of the hosts and their guests, which do not necessarily reflect those of LTD Media or their sponsors. But they should.
Welcome to Inside Track with Bruce Ash and Eb Wilkinson on the Live the Dream Media Network.
Hello, everyone. Oh, got to get in the frame here. Okay. And a very pleasant good morning to you, wherever you may be. Welcome to a special edition of Inside Track. Bruce Ash and
Eb Wilkinson.
Here, come to you live from the Live the Dream Streamverse studios in Marana, Arizona. Eb?
Hey, thanks for joining us on Live the Dream Media app or watching us on X, Facebook, YouTube, and any of the other platforms. The first half of the show is brought to you by Essential Pest Control. Call them to keep your home free from all sorts of insects, vermin, and weeds. Call them today at 886-3029. The red ants are out, the black ants are out, and boy, do they sting when they bite. Summer's arrived, and there are tons of these bugs out there invading the homes and offices. Bugs Fear Essential. Call them today to protect your home or business.
We actually had a call last week from a construction company in one of our office parks that they had a hornet's nest at their front door. I called them at about 11 a.m., and by 3 p.m., their serviceman was out there taking care of it. So they do good job. Also supporting Inside Track is Eb's great company, Wilkinson Wealth Management. I'm a client, along with my sister, in case you didn't know it. And Eb does a great job for our family, and our other longtime sponsor, Tucson Iron and Metal Surplus, and finally my family-run company is a new sponsor, Paul Ash Commercial Real Estate, where we make good things happen every day. Before we get to our special guest today, biographer Brian J. Jones, Eb and I want to take a moment for a few words of praise and respect for Dolly Parton, who passed yesterday at the age of 80. She was a special talent and a special soul who spoke and sang to and for all of us Americans, spanning 7 decades. She was not just trashy cheek. Dolly was a heroic figure who actually helped many young Americans rise from poverty by learning how to read and also enjoy reading. Her life was a blessing. She will be missed. Dolly will not be easily replaced. Eb?
Hey, Bruce and I are pleased to welcome our special guest today on Inside Track, Brian J. Jones. Brian is a prolific biographer who's written books about children's author Dr. Seuss, Muppets creator Jim Henson, and George Lucas, as well as 19th century author Washington Irving. Bruce read a review of his latest book, The Capitol, in the Wall Street Journal, and thought our viewers would enjoy meeting him. His newest book, The Capitol, the surprising biography of an American building, treats the Capitol almost like a living character, covering architecture, politics, violence, race, and national identity. Some of the reviews of his new book, The Capitol: a lively chronicle by the Wall Street Journal, nuanced, profoundly human, and painstakingly researched by NPR, compelling, sweeping in scope, said the New Yorker. And
so, is Brian with us yet, Tony? All right. Well, I'll text him again, and hopefully we'll get him on ASAP.
Well, while we're waiting to do that, I got to tell you, the politics right now in New York City and Los Angeles, California, is going absolutely crazy. These people are nut jobs. Everything from wanting to give away groceries at 30% discount. Yeah, let's see how that plays out. To if you're the mayor of Los Angeles, hey, send me money and the city will match it 5-1. Are you kidding me? Once again, absolute theft of your taxpayer dollars. I hope she goes out with a bang. And then, of course, we've got the WNBA. Those people, once again, crazy. They can't define a woman. They're all for transgenders in the women's sports. And yet, when you have 2 great basketball players declare themselves eligible for the draft, they come out and say, oh, you're not eligible. And it's not because you're not a woman, but we're not going to tell you why you're not eligible. That is hypocrisy at the highest. And who knows where the we don't see anything with the feminist organizations trying to protect the women. National Organization Women, absolutely nothing to say about that at all. Once again, hypocrisy at its finest. So we've got Dolly Parton. Sadly, she passed away. She had great shows. My most favorite memory of her was with the Chicken Ranch. Wonderful, wonderful show. Her singing, absolutely phenomenal. Her movie 9 to 5 hit it out of the park. She will absolutely be sadly missed. Iran just sent a message to Trump after the U.S. Hit them, the regime, with economic D-Day. And they say that the U.S. will gain nothing, and they are going to basically put the U.S. out of business. The leader made comments of central bank on the central bank meeting a day after the U.S. officially launched Operation Economic Outcast, a plan to isolate Iran economically and expand sanctions. Our objective is economic lifeline and sustains this tyrannical regime until Tehran stands alone, said Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on Monday. Those who stand with the U.S. will reap the rewards of our partnership. Those who tether themselves to Tehran should expect to share the isolation of a withering regime. Bruce, any word?
We're efforting him right now. Okay. I'm just going to tell him to.
Well, while Bruce is doing that, let's go ahead and talk again once once again about the LA mayor race. Los Angeles Democratic mayoral candidates were torched by residents after a debate last night in America's second most populous city, the one voters described as disgraceful. Besides being a home to Hollywood, Los Angeles is one of America's most economically important cities. The city, however, has struggled with recent fires, rising living costs, homelessness, and outmigration. Those problems have fueled a particularly contentious mayoral race this year, which included a surprisingly competitive but ultimately unsuccessful bid by Republican Spencer Pratt. Bruce?
We're still efforting Mr. Jones. I've told him to go ahead and call in. And
well, while we're waiting for him, what's your view on what's going on in Los Angeles?
What's happening in Los Angeles? It's a mess. in the mayor's race?
Yes.
Well, it's the two communists fighting with one another right now, and everybody trying to duck for cover for all the mistakes that they've been making. I mean, they've got a lot to apologize for and atone for the way that Los Angeles has been run. Miss Bass as mayor, and her challenger, another Democrat who's on the city council. I'm not sure that Pratt would have been any better, but we do wish that LA would try to become the great city that it wants to be.
And
the only good thing they have right now is the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Absolutely. And how long will they stay there?
Forever.
Okay.
They're never going anywhere.
Okay.
And Mark Walter's not selling the team, and he's not going to jail. And all you Dodger haters out there, you ought to be ashamed of yourselves. Tony, do we have Mr. Jones on the line? Lots of dead air here.
Well, while we're waiting for that, let's talk about the Supreme Court victory, giving Trump that victory on the mail-in voting.
Yeah, so this was a victory of sorts. Certainly vindicates the president's position with respect to trying to make up for the Senate, who's basically been stalling and sleepwalking through this whole business with the Save America Act. Okay. All right. By Jay Jones, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. Good morning. Thank you.
All right. Yep. Go ahead.
Hey, welcome to Inside Track, Brian. We are pleased to welcome our special guest today on Inside Track, Brian J. Jones. He's a prolific biographer who's written books about Dr. Seuss, Jim Henson, George Lucas. We already talked about that. Brian, welcome to Inside Track. What led you to writing The Capitol?
January 6th actually led me to it. I am a former Senate staffer. I spent nearly a decade working in the U.S. Senate. I worked for Senator Pete Domenici of your neighboring state, New Mexico. And watching events unfold on January 6th made me really, really, really angry and very upset. And that entire day, my phone was ringing off the hook from old Hill staffers that I knew. Everybody saying, "Can you believe this? Can you believe what you're saying?" And watching people in the Senate gallery in particular, rifling through people's papers and sitting up in the presiding officer's chair was just absolutely horrifying. And it was one of those things I wanted to, after that all happened, I wanted to, sort of my way of coping with that was I wanted to try to do something right by the building. And to tell the building's story, which had actually never been told in sort of a comprehensive way. There's lots of books on the architecture of the Capitol and lots of books on the art of the Capitol. But there's not really a comprehensive history that sort of ties all of those things together. So it was one of those projects as I went along. I had people tell me, I have a therapist who actually said, learn to fall in love with the project now. And I get past being pissed. And it just turned out to be just a fantastic project. I loved every minute of doing it. Everything I read it was a really fun project.
So you made this the case that the story about the Capitol is really the story of America. What does that building tell us about the American character that we might not understand by simply reading a history of the presidents and Congress?
I think one of the really interesting things it shows us is how much of the American experiment is unplanned, how much of it is improvisation, how much of it is ad-libbing, how much of it is luck, how much of it is having the right people in the right place at the right time. How much of it is built on the back of enslaved people? How much of it is built through compromise? From the very first moment that they were talking about even building the Capitol, there's that sort of famous room where it happened conversation where they're trying to even figure out where to put it, where to put Washington, D.C., where to put what the capital city would be. And that's a compromise, even just where it's going to be located. Partly you had the power of George Washington's personality on the side of putting it on the banks of the Potomac, but there was a lot of give and take. And then once they decide on that spot, one of the really charming parts of the American experiment and sort of our faith in the American people is Jefferson tells Washington, let's open the design of this building up to the public. Let's have a contest. Let's let any American submit their design for the U.S. Capitol. So they put the American iconography in the hands of the American people from day one, which I found really charming, especially because at the time they're doing this in the 1790s, there really aren't that many professional architects in the United States. And they get these really charming drawings of what people think cool buildings should look like. It's like when you're a kid and you draw a car, and it's a car that can't really exist in 3 dimensions, but you think it looks really cool. So they get a lot of people who are submitting drawings because they're participating. They want to influence the American iconography. So it's very charming as well.
So, what was the most surprising discovery you made while researching the book?
It's interesting because having lived and worked in Washington, D.C. for a long, long time, and when I worked on Capitol Hill, I would ride my bike every day from my house on 6th Street on Capitol Hill and down past the Capitol to the Lincoln Memorial and back. And even with as many times as I went past the dome, if I knew I forgot it, I forgot that the dome is not made out of stone. That is not rock or marble you're seeing up there. It's all cast iron painted white. And because of that, it's much lighter than had you built that entire structure out of marble. Even the columns you're seeing are hollow cast iron painted white. And in the early days, they would use them for drainage and sometimes for chimneys. But I had forgotten that entire structure is made out of cast iron. And the other thing that I think is so fascinating about it is there's a little bit of architectural sleight of hand going on in that dome is not actually resting on the roof of the Capitol. The entire structure is sort of cantilevered on the rotunda. The rotunda is a round room in the middle, and at the very, very top of it, there's a whole bunch of cast iron struts jutting out from around the edges of it, holding up the Capitol. And that's what's supporting all the weight of the building. They couldn't actually put it on the rooftop. It wouldn't hold. So they did this sort of magic trick where they've got it held by cantilevers, and then they dressed it up to cover up the cantilevers are so it looks like it's sitting on top of the dome, on top of the Capitol building itself, but it's not. A really, really interesting architectural sleight of hand.
So, if the Capitol reflects the character of the United States, what does its history reveal about who we really are?
I think what it reveals is, that democracy is messy. That the American experiment is messy, that the American imagination perseveres a lot of times through sheer force of will and through sheer force of personality. The building itself kind of grows along with the nation. It's burnt at one point by the British and has to be sort of torn down and started over again, which we had to sort of do with the nation at that time. It perseveres throughout the Civil War. It's unfinished at that time, but work continues. And Lincoln understood the metaphor behind that. Part of why the work continued was purely financial. The company that had the contract to build the dome had a clause that basically said you will complete it. So they continued working throughout the Civil War. And Lincoln understood the metaphor behind that, the importance behind that, and said, the work on the dome continues as work on the nation continues. So there's always been a lot of serendipity involved in it, but there's serendipity involved in the American experiment as well.
So there have been some incredible characters in this book, people whose names most Americans have never heard of. Who was the person you discovered during your research that made you think, how has this story not become part of American history?
The early architects of the Capitol are all equally fascinating. And what was really fun about this book is, I'm a biographer by trade, not really a historian, and this felt more like history. But when I was discussing writing it with my agent, he said, this is biography. The building's your main character, and everybody that comes in and out is a supporting cast. And there's so many interesting supporting cast members, including those architects of the Capitol and the superintendents. Almost every single chapter of this book has conflict between a superintendent and the architect sort of going at it. The architects have drawn up the plans for the buildings, and the superintendents are trying to get their fingerprints on it and trying to put their influence on the design and trying to get their name. There is literally one of the superintendents, Montgomery Meigs, who is a brilliant superintendent. He's a military officer of Army Corps of Engineers, great engineer, but this very fragile ego. He literally at one point has his name cast in iron on some of the struts that are being used in the building. So his name is sort of permanently on the building. They're not in there anymore. They were removed when they redid the roof. But Meigs is constantly trying to influence the infrastructure of this building. And the architect at the time he's working with is Thomas Walter, who's the one who designs that majestic dome there. So Walter's one of those names that I think people should hear more about. The dome, again, when I talked about serendipity, Thomas Walter had not been asked to design that dome. He had been asked to build extensions on the ends of the Capitol where the House and the Senate could go as the country was getting bigger and they needed more members, so they needed more space. And as Walter is designing this new Capitol with those extensions on there, where the Congress and the House and the Senate still meet today, he realized that the current dome they had sitting on it looked too small and stocky and stubby. And he sort of draws what he thinks is a really nice looking dome for that. And it looks a lot like what the dome currently looks like now, but hangs it up in his office. And members of Congress are walking by that drawing hanging in the office and said, can we have that? We would really like to have that. And Montgomery Meigs, of course, jumps on and says, absolutely, you can have it. I can build that for you in a year. It'll cost $1 million. Both of those numbers are wildly wrong. It takes a lot longer than that to build, but it was just one of those happy accidents again that seems to define the way the Capitol is designed and built, and again, the way the country is sort of designed and built. There's a lot of happy accident there. But Thomas U. Walter and Montgomery Meigs, I think, are a fascinating dynamic. They take up a lot of the book because they're building the Capitol at a really important time, but there's so much going on between those two. They just do not get along.
Bruce?
So thanks for joining us today, Brian. Sorry it was a little difficult getting in. I talked on the phone yesterday with our oldest son who worked in the Capitol himself for several years for a House member about our interview today. And he wanted me to ask you a question, whether you knew where the spare columns from the Capitol are elsewhere in D.C.
Yeah, they're out at the Arboretum, which is a really interesting spot for them.
Great story. How the heck did they end up out there?
So when they were extending the eastern front, the Capitol now has what they consider a west front and an east front. So they don't really consider the Capitol has the front of a building, but for years and years, the east was the side that was considered the front. You came in through that. And after Thomas Walter, who we talked about, finished extending the Capitol and building that dome, people were kind of, let the building be for a long time. But it drove Walter crazy because he thought that east front looked like it was being crushed under the weight of the dome. He thought it just gave you this optical illusion that it looked like it was really precarious. And he had proposed pushing that east front out about 30 feet for years and years and years. And it got tabled for almost 100 years. So finally, when they got ready to extend the east front of the Capitol, what they did was they essentially just recreated the facade as it is and tore that off and left the existing structure there and just pushed that front out. But they reconstructed the east front out of better materials. So they took those initial pillars that were on the east front down and moved them out to the Arboretum, where they're really nicely displayed out there now, and you can go see them.
And why did they select the Arboretum, do you think?
I don't know. They sat around for a long time in various places. I think they didn't quite know what to do with them until finally somebody said, we've got someplace nice and quiet and peaceful and lovely to put them.
So the Capitol has survived. You mentioned the January 6th events, invasion by the British, fire, bombings, a couple of well-known radicals tried to blow up the Capitol and failed. Shootings and political upheaval. What explains the really extraordinary resilience of the image and the institution of what this building is to America?
So I argue in the book that the Capitol sort of embodies the American psyche. And because of that, it is sort of a natural vortex for a lot of events. It's very symbolic. So a lot of times when people want to do some symbolic act, this is where they choose. It is literally meant to be the heart of the American government. In Washington, D.C., it is the zero line from which they start, doing first, second, third streets, A, B, and C streets. They all start at the dead center of the U.S. Capitol. At one point, they had discussed burying George Washington beneath the rotunda, literally buried at the center of the Capitol, the center of the American government. So, it is literally the icon of the American government. But when they were building it and reconstructing it and redesigning it, there was a lot of a lot of happy accidents, but a lot of forethought went into a lot of the architects and a lot of superintendents and a lot of senators and congressmen, including Jefferson Davis, who actually had chaired the Public Buildings Committee before the Civil War, said, you have to build this building to endure. Build this out of great materials. We're not going to build this out of wood. We're not going to build this out of plaster and sandstone. When we can now, we're going to build this building out of marble and stone. So so the building is built to last. And again, the sort of metaphor there is they're trying to build the American government to last. But that took time. It started off made out of wood, which is why why it was easy to burn in some places. The places where that building had not burned were where it had been reinforced with concrete arches. So, again, like the American government, there's some places that were reinforced and others that weren't. So there was some forethought put into making sure the structure was built to last, and it was designed to stand, and it was designed to withstand assaults and attacks. And when some of the bombings that happen, one of them goes off in the lobby of on the Senate side. It looks terrible when you see the damage from it, but it was not. It was expensive at the time, but it wasn't. It didn't do a lot of irreparable damage. It was a lot of cosmetic stuff, blew out some windows, and so they've been very lucky, and in that they chose the materials wisely. So anytime there was a bombing inside the Capitol, it was mostly a matter of cleaning up and then saying, well, where we have to rebuild, we'll rebuild back even better, and continue to do that even to this day.
Where did they get the marble? Where did they get the granite?
So the marble came from quarries close by, especially at the time when you didn't want to have to bring it from very far. A lot of it was, some of it was sandstone, but a lot of the marble came from quarries in Montgomery County, Maryland, for example, and from down in, I always say it wrong, I think it's Acquia, Virginia, just down the river, and were brought up by boat. Later on, they were bringing marble and other stones in from, Massachusetts and things like that. But in the early days, most of its local materials coming from up and down the river.
So if you would talk for a moment about the symbolism and the power. I love architecture, but I absolutely love art. And that building is filled with great symbols and art. But so talk about the power of the artwork, the frescoes, even the flooring of the Capitol, which is incredibly unique to the building.
Yeah, that was another instance where they were trying to make sure that it was built to last. So the tiles you're talking about are what they called Minton tiles. And that was something Montgomery Meigs, that problematic superintendent I was talking about, really insisted on putting down on the floor because he said they don't wear out. The colors won't fade. And that Minton tile is still there today looking great. It was built to last. As far as the art went, initially there was some controversy over the art. They didn't want it being too opulent. They thought that looked very European. But as time went by and they decided to do art, they wanted American artists when they could possibly get them. That didn't always happen. A lot of the sculptures, there's some Italian sculpture and Italian architects. But one of the most influential in the Capitol is Constantino Brumidi. And Brumidi's a Roman-born painter who does frescoes and painted frescoes in the Vatican, who becomes an American citizen in the process of painting the hallways of the Capitol, mostly on the Senate side. But he's the one responsible for that really beautiful painting inside the dome, that gigantic mural that you're standing on the floor and looking up almost 300 feet above your head. He painted that in not too long of a time. But he's the one that really gave the Senate side in particular this really unique sort of, it's almost like the Sistine Chapel ceiling as you're walking through the Senate side, and every detail is covered. And almost all of that art is one man. It's Brumidi, who there's a really great story of him when he was painting the walls inside the dome. He painted the upper half of the dome, but there was also a sort of a winding band inside that's the history of the United States. And while he was painting that, and he's in his 70s, at that point, he falls off of his scaffolding and dangles from about 60 feet off the floor until somebody comes to rescue him. And at that point, he was done. He went home, never really recovered, and somebody else finished it off. But he's, doing all of this by hand. It's his original drawings, and he does what they called cartoons, sort of rough sketches of this that then he blows up into the roof, and that mural you see in the Capitol, it's on a curved ceiling. And even if you stand up near the top of the dome, it still looks perfect up there. He's incredibly talented. It's a really majestic work.
So talk just a little bit more about the structure, how the Capitol was designed and actually built out, and the disagreements that influenced the Capitol's design and construction. Who lost the battles there?
So the one who won most of the battles was George Washington. And when they first started doing when they put out the request for proposals, for example, when they wanted people to submit drawings for the Capitol, among the first drawings that came in was one with a dome on it. And Washington said immediately, I have to have a dome. So once word got out that Washington wanted that dome, drawings start coming in with domes on them. And the first architect of the Capitol, winner of that contest, is not an architect. He's a physician who's sort of a dabbler in architecture named William Thornton. And Thornton does a very elegant design. And there's still elements of Thornton's design in that building. The old wings of the Capitol, which are kind of like where the old House and Senate wings are still there. And that's from Thornton's initial vision. But his dome is sort of what I call a push button dome. It's not very big, but he put that dome there knowing Washington loved it. And throughout multiple architects who were trying to revise and change the design of the building, Thornton kept coming back to them and saying, you cannot mess with that dome. Washington wants that dome. He kept name dropping Washington whenever he could, but Thornton's butting heads with his superintendent, who came in second in the contest, and Washington puts him in charge of building the Capitol to Thornton's design. It's sort of a bad idea to put the loser in charge of implementing the winner's design, and it's an architect named Stephen Hallé who's constantly trying to get his fingerprints onto that building. So with the power of Washington behind him, those arguments keep getting won. But as we move throughout the building and the rebuilding of it, you do have a lot of presidential influence on it. It was really interesting how much influence the executive branch could have on the legislative building, and it had to do with partly the architect of the Capitol reported to the president. They've now changed that so that the architect of the Capitol serves the Congress. This is the U.S. Capitol. This is the embodiment of the Congress. The Congress finally figured out they needed to cut the chief executive out, and they did that a while back. But you constantly had influence of the president and who they hired and who they fired.
Yeah, well, that was a good decision. Eb?
Brian, what architectural feature carries the greatest symbolic meaning, and which feature is most commonly misunderstood?
I think the one that carries the most symbolic meaning is that dome, simply because if you just put a silhouette of that building up, people know it immediately by that dome. So I think that dome does a lot of work. I mean, it's there's symbolism in it because it's soaring and it's aspirational, and it's constantly lit at night. The dome is always lit up. The lights never go out. Even during the wars, they had left the lights on the dome of the Capitol. So I think that is its most easily recognizable and probably most important feature. Without that dome, it would look like an office building. We wouldn't, if you saw it in profile, you wouldn't necessarily know it was the U.S. Capitol building. That dome really defines it. The most surprising ones, I think, are some of those little nooks and crannies inside the Capitol. I mean, the first meeting place of the House of Representatives still exists today. It's now Statuary Hall. And it's a really beautiful room. It's one of my favorite rooms in the Capitol when I go back and look at it. The old Senate chamber still exists and has been set up again to look as it did when they were using it in the 1800s. So those are some of my favorite buildings. I think those are the hidden gems in there that people don't necessarily know it still looks like that. There's still places you can see what the old Capitol building looked like. There's still some original stone from the laying of the Capitol. The one thing they've never been able to find, however, is the cornerstone, the initial cornerstone that was laid by George Washington. They've looked for it several times. They thought they found it several times, but to this day, it still remains an unanswered question. Have they ever found the actual cornerstone laid by George Washington?
So you talk about the Senate chamber that they put back into the way it was in the 1800s. What do they use it for?
Uh, Mostly, you just go and stand and look at it.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes they've used it for overflow, like when at one point in the I think in the early part of the 20th century when they were renovating parts of the Capitol, they had to use the old Senate chamber. But now and the old Senate chamber, a lot of it had been used for parties, and in the 1960s there was a lot of dismay over whether they wanted to renovate and restore it because people were saying it's a perfectly fine room to have banquets in. And they finally prevailed to say, no, let's preserve it and make it look like it did back when Daniel Webster was here. So it's mostly a museum piece when you go see it today. And one floor directly below it is the old Supreme Court chambers. And I believe that's been used once or twice, but for the most part, it too is sort of just a museum piece for you.
So how many times have you gone back there to do your research for the book?
Several. And the last time I tried to go, it was closed. I went in last December, in fact, just to go sort of like spot check some things. And I got up there and it had been closed down. And I don't know why. I don't know if there was some event or not, but I couldn't get into it. Fortunately for a lot of this, having worked in that building for so long, as I was researching it, I would read stories and I think, oh God, oh yeah, I know exactly where that is. I know exactly what that looks like when they would talk about things happening out on the East Portico. The first assassination attempt in history is against Alexander Jackson on the East Portico, on the east steps of the U.S. Capitol. While it's been pushed out 30 feet, I knew exactly what that looked like when I was writing about it. So having lived and worked there was also really, really helpful when I was writing and researching this.
So when you were working there and during your time researching it, did you find any places in the Capitol you didn't know exist?
Not really. And partly it was because when I was there as a Senate staffer, and this was pre September 11th, your congressional ID got you almost anywhere in that building. It doesn't do that quite as much anymore, even for staff. But so there would be some holiday weekends, for example. I remember going up once on a Columbus Day weekend and just flashing my badge and walking up the steps of the Capitol, and I could duck under ropes and just walking through that building. And my boss had one of the sort of secret hideaways they give the more senior members, that it's just this little room that doesn't have a number on the door. His actually looked out over the mall. As a staff, we used to go over there for 4th of July and watch the fireworks from his hideaway. So I've seen a lot of places in that building that are restricted access, and probably even more restricted access post September 11th.
Bruce?
So before we conclude here today, Brian, we're running a little short on time. You worked for one of the really great senators in the 20th and early 21st century, Pete Domenici. Talk about your experiences with him and talk about how he really connected you in some respects to the project that you've just finished, the Capitol.
Yeah, the story I love to tell. I mean, it was. I wrote about this on my website as well. But it was, going to staff year member always felt really big and important, no matter what you were doing, because there's a process for it. You would take the underground subway over to the Capitol building. You take the elevators up, and you'd get to the cloakroom, and you had to check in and make sure you were on the list to get, because it's called floor privileges. Even as a staffer, you don't have floor rights; you still have floor privileges. And they give you, to check you off on the list, and you walk in through the back sort of lobby area, like where the private chamber where they all meet, and where there's back then there used to be telephones sitting around and little phone booths you could shut and talk inside. And you walk through that back room, and then you open these doors, and it's almost like the stage set to a play. It's that chamber looking the way it has pretty much since 1859 or 1860. It's been, repainted and revised a little bit, but still looks very much the same. And you walk into this very dramatic, really beautiful room, and you have to be very quiet, and you speak in hushed tones. And as a staff member, you sit in the back behind a railing, and you kind of wait until it's your turn, and your member will stand up and turn and maybe beckon to you. And you walk down very quietly, and they bring you a chair. You don't sit in the first time I ever went down to staff my member, I sat down in his seat, and he turned around and said, "You can't sit there." And so I got up and I sat in the chair of the senator next to him, and he said, "You still can't sit there." And they bring you a chair. One of the Senate pages brings you a chair you sit down in, and then you sit in the chair and you try not to look up at the cameras that C-SPAN. So, your job is to be invaluable but invisible. and you nod yes or shake your head no if your member looks back, and you hand them papers and try to it's a whole process, and it's really fun. And those are the moments we all waited for. Everything felt important. There would be some evenings you'd be working at 7:30 at night, and the senator's executive assistant would say, Senator Minchie lived on Capitol. He would walk home some nights, and she would say, Senator's going to just walk home from the floor. Somebody just needs to bring him his briefcase and his coat. We would fall over each other to be the person that got to go over there and bring him his suitcase, his briefcase, and his coat. Because again, you got to go through the entire process, got to take the subway over and go into the cloakroom and going through the back and walk out on the floor. I mean, everything was a really big deal. And that was one of the things I loved, the ritual of just working in that place and going into that room and knowing that so much has happened in there over the last, century. So it was, working there was a real privilege. And again, that's why they call it floor privileges, not floor rights. It was always a really special place, that building.
Well, thanks very, very much for joining us today, Brian. Sorry we had some trouble getting you connected. Before we let you go to get on with your day, tell the audience what's the best way to find the book, The Capitol, that you've just released.
Sure, I appreciate that. The Capitol is actually available from pretty much any bookseller you want to use. It's in all the bookstores right now. Your favorite bookseller, you can use whichever one you want. I get paid the same. So you can find them in fine bookstores online and bricks and mortar everywhere.
All right. Well, Eben, I wish you good luck on the book. Thanks very much. And we'll be looking for your next biography or whatever it is that you produce the next time.
Oh, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Brian.
All right. We've got to run away for a couple minutes to hear from our great supporters so we can pay the Live the Dream Streamverse man. Stay tuned. No channel flipping. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Inside Track with Bruce Ash on the Live the Dream Media Network. Now a word from our sponsor.
It's termite season.
Hi, it's me.
And bugs fear the blue trucks from Essential Pest Control. Go blue at Essential Pest Control. We'll eliminate those bugs, bees, and termites. And stop paying too much to that national provider. Buy local for great service and affordable rates. Call Essential Pest Control because termites fear the blue.
Run for your life.
Call for the blue trucks from Essential Pest Control. 886-3029. That's 886-3029. Or check online at essentialpest.com.
This is Eb Wilkinson with Wilkinson Wealth Management, where we manage money for gun owners. What does it mean to retire comfortably and remain comfortably retired? It means designing a plan that allows you to do the things you want to do, outpace inflation, and never run out of money in your lifetime. If you want to retire comfortably and remain comfortably retired, call me, Eb Wilkinson, at 777-1911. That's 777-1911 or WilkinsonWealthMGMT.com.
I'm proud to welcome my good friends at Tucson Iron and Metal Retail to Inside Track as an advertiser. Jamie Kipper and her staff are conservation experts. They sell round and square steel tubing, metal plate and roofing materials, as well as new and used steel, aluminum, and stainless steel to ranchers, artists, interior designers, roofers, as well as you do-it-yourselfers out there. Tucson Iron and Metal Retail is open Monday through Fridays, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., and Saturdays, 8 a.m. to noon. Tucson Iron and Steel Retail, 701 East 36th Street. Call 520-209-1576. That's 520-209-1576, or go to TucsonIronRetail.com. Come by and be sure to ask for Jamie. Tucson Iron and Steel Retail, this is what conservation and repurposing is all about.
Does your ordinary radio feel a little limited? If you're looking for a new way to listen, it's time for a fresh start. Introducing the Live the Dream Media app, your premier destination and a new level up for digital radio. Over the last 2 years, we've found new ways to ensure your digital radio experience is the best it can possibly be. From live podcasts that spark new perspectives to a 24/7 soundtrack of live music, and even our built-in merch store. We've built a platform that is convenient, high quality, and simple to navigate. But we're only just getting started. Catch all of our shows weekly and join the Live the Dream Media family today and help us change the airwaves forever. Download it for free on the App Store or Play Store today. Live the dream. The dream starts now.
Welcome back to Inside Track with Bruce Ash on the Live the Dream Media Network. Now back to our show.
Welcome back to Inside Track. This portion of the show brought to you by Ebb's great company, Wilkinson Wealth Management. Ebb helps my family, and he can help you also. Let Ebb comfortably guide you and your family into a secure retirement and stay comfortably retired. That's the real key, staying comfortably retired. Wilkinson Wealth Management. Call him, Ebb, today at 777-1911. Ebb?
Inside Track is also brought to you by Essential Pest Control. Call the Essential Pest team today at 886-3029. Tucson Iron and Metal Retail has supported this show since 2017 and is a resource to builders, ranchers, farmers, and have great steel products for home projects as well. Call them at 209-1576. And also Bruce's family-run company, Paul Ash Commercial Real Estate, where his great team makes great things happen every great day. Call him at 795-2100. Bruce?
Hey, everybody. Our friend Christy Simone and Grant Kruger are putting on a shindig tonight to help Chris King to the Arizona State Senate and John Winchester to the Arizona House from LD17. I'll be there along with the podcast today, and we hope you'll join us also. LD17 is the key to keeping control of the legislature. Help keep Arizona free from the socialists and their crazy plans.
Where's the shindig?
At Reforma.
Okay.
Yeah, at Reforma in St. Philip's Plaza. Sorry about that. Not very good directions.
Yeah.
Our super secret guest for the next several minutes before we close out today is Chris King, one of those guys running in LD17. He's running for the state Senate. Chris is on his way to Phoenix for meetings and joins us as he travels up I-10. Thanks for joining us, Chris.
Good morning, Bruce. Morning, Eb. How are you guys?
Morning.
Doing good. Hey, I know you do your
I
door
could have
walking.
sat and listened to that author for the next 2 hours.
Wasn't he fun?
That was amazing.
Yeah. It's a fascinating book. You do door walking, and you and your other helpers meet constituents. What are the key issues on the minds of LD17 voters?
It really depends on where in the district you are. It crosses boundaries. It's affordability. It's public safety. It's some of it's retaining, our American culture as it is, retaining the Arizona independence that we have, because like District 17 or like the United States, Arizona and District 17 are different. They're diverse. They have different beliefs, they have different cultures, they have different pieces that they look for. So education is a big issue in a lot of the areas.
Yeah. So Chris, how does a senator, kind of balancing all of these different sorts of communities that are within the district, how does one balance what he or she needs to do when they actually serve in the legislature? And have you figured out that game as well?
So some of it is looking at how does it impact the state in a holistic manner, because one person's piece doesn't necessarily impact 7.7 million other people's view. So while we'll be representing LD17, you also have to look at what's best for the state.
Sure.
So Chris,
and we see that on the school board as well, where I represent a little over 60,000 voters, in addition to their children and staff and everything else. And not everybody has the same opinion, and not everybody agrees. But you have to look at what's best for the majority.
So Chris, you won the primary by 61.87%, which is huge. Wasn't even close. Why do you want this Senate seat badly enough to leave the school board and take on a much bigger job of representing LD17?
Well, thankfully, I don't have to leave the school board to do that.
Oh, really?
So I'll actually be able to serve in both capacities. Correct. And there are a lot of legislators in Phoenix who serve either as teachers, school board members, prior school board members. So you don't necessarily have to leave to serve in both capacities.
So
So
you were EOD in the Air Force.
Yes, sir.
How did that experience shape your philosophies about leadership, responsibility, and government?
Interesting, after I retired from the Air Force is really when I started focusing on my education. And some of the things that applied to my job in the military was, if it isn't going to kill you, don't necessarily have to waste too much mental energy on it. So I remember writing some of my first papers at the U of A, and I'm like, wait a minute, I don't have if I pass, okay. If I don't pass, okay. It's not going to legitimately kill me. When you've been shot at, when you've been blown up, when you've had people actively trying to
kill you,
unalive you, yes, you really do kind of you get a sense of what's really important. And that's exactly what I did.
So education is one of your major priorities. What specifically does parental choice mean when you get to the state Senate?
So absolutely want to make sure that we protect parental choice and education freedom, because that education freedom allows the parents to make those choices, whether that's the curriculum they choose, whether it's the school they send their kids to. All of those things are important, and we need to make sure that we protect those choices, protect the ESAs, because since the program has been developed, we're now over 100,000 students and families who protect or who've made that choice. So my daughter and son-in-law, my granddaughters, are now ESA students. They started off the school that served their neighborhood was a failing school, and still is I believe it's a D-rated school. So they sent them to a charter school, a public charter school, and they started getting bullied there. And my daughters and my son-in-law are like, no, we're not going to do this. And they pulled them completely out of the school and moved them on to making sure that they're getting the education that they need. So they're doing the curriculum. So they're getting the social aspects, through their sports programs that they're both involved in. And you can see the physiological change in my granddaughters, because they had a look of worry and fear when they would go to school. And now they have that childlike look back to their faces. So their eyes are bright. They smile. They will engage with you as an adult, which is some of the soft skills that we need to be teaching. We need to be engaging as parents, as grandparents, as community members. My granddaughters are learning that through their homeschool program, their ESA program. So, and that's one of those things that we need to make sure that we protect, because under the Arizona law 1-601, the Parental Bill of Rights, parents are the ones who make the choices, not the government. And we need to make sure that we protect those rights.
And if we lose the majority in the legislature, ESAs go out the window, educational security goes out the window, parental choice goes out the window. Isn't that really what's at issue here in this election?
Absolutely. And that's just one of the issues. The fundamental rights that we have as Americans. Constitutional carry will be going out the window almost on day one. Parental choice and education will probably go out the window on day one. Taxes will go increase. We don't want to see Arizona become the next Virginia or California. When Abby Spanberger took over Virginia, they had 38 new taxes presented to them, and it's just going to continue impacting people. We want to make Arizona affordable. We don't want to make Arizona a place where businesses run away from.
Let's talk about that affordability. Arizona families are dealing with rising costs. What can the state legislature realistically do to make Arizona more affordable without simply creating another government program?
I'm glad you put the government program piece in there, Ab, because government is not the solution. Government is the problem. So we need to make sure that government gets out of the way of people who are the creators, the people who are the builders, the people who are the trainers. We need to make sure that the government gets pulled back and put back in their respective bucket, because government is not the solution. More government has never been the solution. And we want to make sure that we continue to, again, protect those rights of families, protect the rights of the business makers, the people who are actually creating the jobs, because government doesn't really create anything other than problems.
So let's change topics for a second. You're a law and order guy. Talk about your views and opinions on what we need to do to better support the Department of Public Safety, because their numbers are down, the funding has been down, and we literally have thousands of motorists who might have an accident in Arizona, or someplace in the very, very rural parts of Arizona, which there's lots of, and there's no highway patrol to support that driver.
Right. And the thing is that we need to make sure that we are funding our public safety people. I was talking to DPS, and when they had that helicopter crash earlier this year, and when they lost the trooper pilot and the trooper paramedic, those weren't replaced. And we need to make sure that ability, that capability that DPS has, we need to make sure that we're protecting that. And talking with them as well, since the 1980s, they've added 1,100 new road miles to basically the inventory here in Arizona, but they haven't added one new officer. So we need to make sure that we're actually providing the resources, providing the ability for that department to actually do its job, do it effectively, do it safely, and make sure that we actually kind of have that benefit, because we do pay the taxes. We want to make sure that we reap the benefit of having them as well.
So
we protect that.
Let me ask a dirty question here. And I mean no disrespect to what I hope will be your future Republican colleagues in the Arizona Senate. The governor up until 2020 in Arizona for 12 or 14 years or so was a Republican. There's been a Republican-dominated legislature even further back than that. How the heck is it that Republicans would not properly fund the Department of Public Safety? And how do you fight that inside the party to get more troopers on the road and more funding for public safety?
Sometimes it's just having the right person in the position to make the fight. And my background in public safety as a bomb technician, I've worked with these guys. I've been on some of the responses with these guys as a bomb tech. And sometimes it just takes having the person who has the knowledge and the backbone that's willing to stand up and fight for them.
So, Chris,
and I'm not going anywhere. I disarmed bombs for 20 years. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, Chris, we've got a problem with this upcoming election. If we lose it and the Democrats take over, they're going to bring back educational and financial slavery, bottom line. They want us to be subjects as opposed to citizens. Compare and contrast the positions between you and your challenger on things like the Second Amendment.
Well, I have been endorsed through the Arizona Citizens Defense League PAC, as well as, I got the endorsement from the NRA as well through their questionnaire. I don't have the voting record necessarily, but I have been willing to stand and fight with AZCDL and Goldwater Institute. I don't know exactly what Mr. Soto's background is, but my guess is, since he's aligned with Joanna Mendoza, who's aligned with Mayor Romero, that they are probably going to come right after your God-given right to defend yourself and your constitutional right on the choice on how you do that.
How about smaller government?
The limited government, well, as I say, what we've seen with the Democrat Party is they are the champions of growing government and making sure that government's involved in every aspect of your life, where we want to make sure that you have the ability to live your life with as little government interference as possible.
Taxpayer protection.
You should be able to keep what you earn. Government doesn't necessarily need all of your money. So being smart with that, the 2.5% flat tax that was passed was done well. And I've talked with the Arizona Tax Research Association, and they're absolutely in favor of keeping that.
Medical freedom.
As citizens, you need to have an informed choice. You need to be informed on what goes into your body, as well as make the choice on what you don't want to have done to you. So, and government shouldn't be the one telling you. And if you're a veteran, you kind of understand this, because when you step up and you're doing that basic medical processing, you're basically signing that life away. And there is a bill that I know Congressman Siscomani is working on at the federal level that allows that informed choice. And we saw during COVID, there were a lot of special operations people. There were a lot of military members. I want to say the number was north of 6,000 who lost their livelihood because they didn't have the choice to actually say no to something that was experimental.
We've got to wrap up. Talk about how our viewers can help you.
Absolutely. So right now we're doing meet and greets. We have this meet and greet tonight at Reforma at 5:00, and we'll be there. We also are raising money. So if you would like, you can go to chrisking4az.com. My friend John Winchester is winchesterforaz.com. I can't remember what Rachel's website is, but she is also going to need money, because this is a fight to make sure that we keep freedom here in Arizona.
Chris, thanks for your time. We wish you the best. Look forward to seeing you again. Bruce?
Thanks, guys. Thanks a lot, guys.
It's time to close up shop for today.
Yep, it is.
So thanks for spending so much time with us and our guests, author Brian J. Jones, his book, The Capitol, and Republican nominee for Arizona State Senate in LD17, Chris King. We hope you'll support and vote for Chris and buy Brian's book, The Capitol. We'll try and get Chris's running mate, Rachel Keschel, on Inside Track soon. All of our Inside Track podcasts are available on Live the Dream Media's Facebook Live page, YouTube, Apple, and X.
Please tune in again next week when we have another action-packed show planned for you. Until then, this is Bruce Ash and
Eb Wilkinson.
We'll see you again in 167 hours. Have a great